Now, when we're writing code for websites, in order to keep our code tidy and easy to debug, we have to keep in mind the idea of the separation of concerns at all times. And what this means is that your HTML is for content only, and your CSS is there to style your website, and your JavaScript is there for behavior. So we've not been following this rule very closely because we've been trying to change the style of each element using JavaScript. We've been writing things like document.querySelector.style.color equals red. And this is not good practice because we're changing the style of each element using JavaScript. Whereas ideally, all of our styles should actually be inside our CSS. But the problem is that if we wanted our style to change on the fly, say if a user clicks on a button, then the color of the background changes, then we kind of need to change that using JavaScript and the style property, right? Well, as with all things programming, there's usually another way, and it's usually better. And so this is one of those cases. Now, one of the things that we can tap into is something called a class list, and it's a property of every DOM object. So, for example, if we query for our button and we tap into its class list property, then you can see that it gives us a list of the classes that are attached to this element that we found. So the element in this case is our button. And you can see that inside the class attribute, we've only got a single class, which is btn. Now, once we have the list of classes, then we can use methods, for example, .add, and we can add classes to the class list. So, for example, if I wanted to add a class, for example, invisible, then I can add this new class to the list of classes on our button element in our document. And now, if I hit enter and we check out our button, you can see that it's got the class btn, but it's also got the class invisible. Now, what this allows us to do is we can tap into the style sheet and we can create a separate style for, say, the invisible class. And we can say maybe visibility is hidden. So now, if I do the same thing, where I add that invisible class to the class list of button, then you can see that as soon as that class is added to our button, the CSS style for invisible gets applied and our button disappears. So this way, we can keep all of our styles still inside our style sheet, but we can turn it on and off using JavaScript. Now, in addition to add, we can also remove. So now at a different stage, I want my button to reappear, then I can simply remove that invisible class and all of the styles that are associated with that class gets taken off that button. And the last method that's quite useful is toggle. And toggle simply means that if the class invisible is already applied, then remove it. And if it's not applied, then apply it. So now if I just keep using toggle, you can see our button comes on and off and on and off. So by doing this, we're staying true to the separation of concerns. So that means that when we need to debug our code, it's going to be a lot easier this way. Because if a particular element is not looking the way that we want it to, then we can simply dig into the style sheet and change it. But if something is not behaving the way that we want it to, then we can go into the JavaScript and dig through the code there. Now, why don't you give it a go? Go into Atom and more specifically the style sheet and create a class called Huge. And I want you to change the font size in there to 10 rem. And when the class Huge is applied to any element, then it will change the text size to 10 rem. And then I want you to go into the JavaScript and apply that to our H1 and see how it works. So pause the video now and give that a go. All right, so first let's create our class. We're going to create a class called Huge, and we're going to change the font size whenever any element gets this class applied to 10 rem. And while we're at it, why not just do some other things as well? Let's change the color to red and change the font weight to bold. And now if we apply this class, then all of these styles will be applied to the same element. And we can do that using our document.querySelector, and we're going to select our H1. And instead of using .style.color equals red, .style.font size equals 10 rem, then all we need to do is just say .ClassList.add, and the class we want to add is called huge. And now if we hit enter, then you can see that our H1 has become 10 rem, red and bold, and all of those styles got applied to it just by using a single line of JavaScript and keeping our code separated so that our style is still in our style sheet and our behavior is still in our JavaScript. Now in the next lesson, we're going to look at not just how we can manipulate styles, but we can see how we can manipulate text using elements that we selected in the DOM. So for all of that and more, I'll see you on the next lesson.